Hey, everybody. Welcome to Reigniting Small Business. I'm Laura Richards, here today with Patrick Lee, CEO of Spark Business Institute. Hey, Patrick.
Hello, Laura. How are you?
I'm doing well. Happy Thanksgiving week.
It is Thanksgiving week and happy almost vacation week, so all good.
Whoop, whoop. All right. So today we're going to be talking about how we can build businesses for innovation and the benefits of an entrepreneurial workplace culture.
Yeah, and so let's get definitions there. When we say entrepreneurial workplace culture, what we mean is one where employees have a sense of ownership and empowerment, right? That the employees are part of determining how to get to whatever that purpose is, and they're given the ability to think, right? So they're bringing ideas. There's a lot happening within that organization. It's not just perform these steps this way, right? And I think it's really important to sort of take a look at what an entrepreneurial workplace culture looks like. So I have a current client that we're working with, and they work with radio stations, and those, they do a lot of data analysis for the radio stations. They're looking at programming and how that affects listeners, what listeners are listening, how it affects advertising, all of that. So they're doing a lot of data analysis, and the employees are all in that data. That's what they do, and they can't help but look at new ways to parse that data, to analyze that data, and new places to analyze data, right? If we're doing radio stations, why can't we do TV stations? Why can't we do digital offerings? What else is there that we can take data and do this analysis with? And so the entire culture is this sort of looking at this stuff and thinking about what's next and how do you break this apart. And they're constantly doing that. So if you're not part of that conversation, if you're not innovating in that space, if you're not having those thoughts and discussions, if you're not being entrepreneurial, you're kind of getting lost in that shuffle.
Right. That's really true. And, when you think about this, the dividends surpass the workplace and extend into the guest and customer experience when we talk about creating an entrepreneurial culture where employees are valued and it's proven that they're going to take better care of the customer. So listening creates listeners. So empowering employees has another benefit as well. So if anybody here has ridden a Peloton, you know what I'm about to talk about. So when you have employees that are that invested in the company's promise, they act as brand ambassadors. They really embody what the company is saying and doing and shooting for. And the benefits are exponential because they are representing the company in and out of work. So that's kind of a big concept there. But they're walking the walk and they're talking the talk, and everybody's going in the same direction. And it really, you feel this groundswell being generated from all of the energy of everybody being a cog in a wheel, and the wheel is moving. So I think on a smaller scale, we can see this in food service, right? When a client or customer is unhappy with something they've purchased, and the employees can run and go replace it and give a coupon for next time. Chick-fil-A is a company that does a really, really good job of that. They empower everybody down to the cashier and the person walking around cleaning tables in the dining room to make the guest experience a good one. And these types of companies really benefit from higher retention and greater job satisfaction on the employees, in addition to higher guest and client satisfaction.
Yeah. And when employees are empowered to take the lead, to take risks, innovation follows. Ideas get generated. Gaps that are seen by folks get reported to the team, and then get acted on. So when employees know their opinions will be heard and valued, they'll be at least listened to. Maybe even something will come from it, right? They become free to contribute in unexpected ways, right? They start listening because they know if they hear something, know something, find something, it's valuable, and it'll be an additional value that they are bringing, right? That's something that we all wish we had. Right? We wish we had the staff that did that. And so where does that start? Well, first of all, it starts at hiring. right? How do you identify who you want, what you want, and what is the process once you have hired to onboard somebody, to indoctrinate them into the entrepreneurial culture, right? You have to be careful, right? Because there's different ways to do this. Some folks, they'll be given a very rigid job description. This is what you must do, and we sort of talk against that, because you don't want to stifle creativity. You don't want to stifle people's ability to do that. But there are certain jobs out there that it kind of has to be that way. So, if it doesn't have to be that way, then it shouldn't be that way, right? But if it does, then how do you create environment for that person to still contribute, right? And I think it becomes a lot more common now, or at least it's known in all of the management literature and everything, right? That you want to show an employee their lane, right? Like, hey, here's your job. Here's what it's designed to accomplish. Here's some best practices. And now do what you got to do to get that job accomplished. And I think that's great. But I think there's a even higher level to this, right? And that's the idea that leadership shows a purpose. There's a purpose behind what we do. And we infuse that culture with that purpose. And we show people that that purpose is important, and that that we believe that they are crucial to us achieving great things towards that purpose. And then it becomes sort of infused in the culture to where, it's not just I'm in my lane doing my thing, which is nice, but I'm also paying attention to everything else. And I see that, wow, my lane is intersecting with that lane over there, and it's not in a positive way. Maybe we should adjust this, right? And then you start getting everybody thinking for the greater good and moving the organization as one.
Absolutely. And, if you've ever worked in a company that both has this, right, that feeling of being part of a machine that's really working well, and how passionate and how exciting it is to come to work every day, versus if you're in that culture where maybe the leader is a micromanager, and maybe your job is extremely defined, you're not super motivated to look for new approaches or share new ideas. So even just in a practical level of looking at it, it's pretty obvious that an entrepreneurial environment is really beneficial to both retention and then output.
Yeah. And so essential to an entrepreneurial culture, both creating it and maintaining it, is leadership. Right. And so, anybody who can lead by example, right, that's going to be the way in which that culture is created and maintained. That's like the masthead out there, right? We see it, we see how it's doing, we know what we're angling towards, what we should be mimicking, basically, right? And I think that that lead by example is super important, because I see this. I've gone into companies where they say the right thing. They say that their culture is X, and they rail against things that sort of don't fit what the right answer is. But they don't actually behave in the culture they're saying they espouse. They behave completely differently, and they wonder why the results are different. And in confused cultures like that, or disingenuous cultures, people in them know that. They know that we don't really care about that, but we're supposed to say we care about that, and then that's what you get, and that's a major problem there. So I think leadership, leading by example, being there as a resource, just being upfront about what our purpose really is, right? What is it really? And showing that, there's care for those folks who are involved in this culture. We do care that you're part of this culture and what you bring to it, right? So if we look at right now, what's going on with the Great Resignation, we've talked an awful lot about that, but it's accelerating. The Great Resignation is accelerating. And we see a lot of employees who are leaving because they're just not aligned with the workplaces that they're leaving from, right? And they're saying, I just don't want to do this anymore without a purpose. This whole survival mentality, go do something I don't want to do, not be valued for who I am and what I contribute. I'm just not interested. This is just not worth it. And I think that could be really good news for hiring organizations. and organizations that are bringing on folks, if you show folks that they care, that you care, right, that what they care about, you care about, that your purpose is real, that they could bring value to a purpose. If they identify with that purpose, then this is probably a good match. And you probably have a good chance of getting folks who are going to be active and will probably stay.
Well, and Patrick, when we did the episode on the Great Resignation, one of the major complaints was that nobody felt like their company valued them, listened to them, and cared about them, both in the health, was COVID, or were they a frontline employee that didn't feel like their health was being taken into consideration? Were they able to take days off for child illnesses and things like that? There were a lot of very specific things that they didn't feel like they were cared for. And so I think it's interesting to see that resonating so loudly in culture. It makes a lot of sense. And it also makes sense that the inverse is true, which is what you just said. If we show and we genuinely, authentically care about our employees and get them singing off the same sheet of music, seeing our visions and being passionate about our missions, and if we hire for those things, the outcome can be phenomenal.
It can be phenomenal. And it's also going to become essential and necessary that Main Street figure that out, because, all of the different polling and all of the, the discussions with the upcoming generation show that they're a purpose-driven generation. They're not interested in just doing something to do it. In fact, they make no bones about it. If there's not something behind what they're about, they're moving on. And, we're going to need to really wrestle with that very, very soon, as certain aspects of our workforce age out and do different things. And this is who we're working with. We better know how to demonstrate purpose and create a culture of purpose to keep those folks interested, right?
100%.
Yeah.
I do think it's important to note, you can't just leave this podcast and say, okay, I'm going out there and I'm going to be intentional. I'm going to create this culture, and next week everybody's going to be indoctrinated. This is very intentional, but it takes consistency, and it takes a period of time over which, you execute on your intention to roll this culture through your employees, and over time change will follow. But obviously, we've talked about change before too, and there will be an immediate and visceral reaction to the changes, even if they're positive. So,
yeah, and I think that's it's important to say this: culture and change both require time. So this isn't like a pronouncement gets made and now we're done, right? It requires time for a culture to actually get settled in, to be the culture. And it takes time for change to become the new norm, right? During the upheaval of change, it's difficult for people. So, we need to think a little bit longer term than, okay, I made my pronouncement. Why isn't everything going the way it should go? So I think that's a very, very, very good point. But let's shift gears for a second here. So we have previously discussed my book, The Great Small Business Plateau and How to Blast Past It, available on Amazon if anybody's interested. But we discussed how, once a business becomes a going concern, right? Once that business has taken off, it's now got revenue coming in, it's got employees, it's now for real, and it's a going concern. It will frequently reach a certain place where whatever that organization did to get to that place, that's not going to get them past that place, right? What got you here won't get you there. And how it becomes harder and harder to sort of stay at that level. Like things just slow down and it feels like the pressures are keeping the organization from moving forward, right? And that's what we call the Great Small Business Plateau. That is sort of the definition of the plateau, right? But after discussing culture, I think it's important to intersect those two things. Like let's just take culture and let's take the plateau and let's say how culture can impact that, because it strikes me that when you decide that you're going to move from a churn point, you're going to move from that point of immense struggle just to maintain where you're at, and you're going to change everything up so that you can blast off and grow. That just by definition, you're going to be changing that culture. And instead of the culture being a limit to what you can do, can you harness culture? Can you harness change in culture to create momentum, to make culture work for you? And I think this is real important. I have a client right now that we're in the process of changing up hugely what this organization is going to look like. It had two owners. One of the owners is retiring. The other owner is assuming full ownership. It's got staff that have been there for an average of about 12 years. They've got some folks who've been there for 25 years, over 20 years. They got some new folks too, but on average, 12 years. That's a long time for somebody to be in a culture that is about to change, right? And if we make all these changes and all those folks are completely resistant to it, dig in their heels and are miserable, it's going to be a struggle for this to be successful. But imagine if we went to them and we gave them this new purpose, we gave them this new piece, we got them on board with it, we heard their feedback on it, we engaged them in these changes, and they became a force to help make it happen. Not to resist it, not to just question it, but to say, okay, we're being heard. We see where this is going. We want to be part of this. We've been here a long time. We feel ownership also. Let's get it there. That to me, that's a powerful piece of turning something that is frequently one of the biggest negatives to accomplishing this and saying, can we turn that to a positive?
And what's so interesting in the case that you're bringing up is the owner is so passionate about this and has wanted to make these changes for a really long time that it will be authentic. He's finally able to create the culture he's always wanted to have. And I think that authenticity piece attracts, right? So hopefully it won't be something that the culture is getting, shoved down people's throats, but it's rather something that people that have been there for a long time can be excited about. But as we talked about, change is always hard. So, but it's just very interesting when the intensity and the passion of the owner is diffused through their employees, and employees become fully empowered to act on that mission and vision and take it where it needs to go. You get this groundswell of energy and this feeling like everything's going in the right direction. And all of a sudden, this made so much sense to me in terms of something you could harness to get people off of the plateau. We've talked about different ways over time too that people can blast past the plateau, and in each case, usually there's a few inhibitors that are blocking our entrepreneurs, and one of them that we find a lot is founder's cap, because employees or rather business owners start their business because they really are excited about whatever it is that they're doing, and so they are the one that does it best. And then they have to show each person how to do it. And if they don't get their hands out and fully invest in the employees they get to do these jobs, the company is stymied. The opposite of that, to me, is this discussion that we're having about culture, empowering employees to live the mission and letting them do those jobs and run with the ball. And to me, that seems like such a great catalyst for growth.
I think it is a great catalyst for growth, and I think it's important to talk to owners and say, hey, if you if you need to be and you believe that you will always be the best at everything in your organization, then you are limiting everything that you're doing to what you currently know and your ability to grow in whatever ways. And by the way, entrepreneurs, folks with founders cap, they're so into what they're doing. They're not learning a lot of new. They're taking everything they have and putting it into it. So when you hit the plateau, having put everything you have, every piece of knowledge you have into it, and now you're stuck, the only answer is to allow others to help, to influence, to bring things you hadn't thought of, new ideas, to lead in places you're maybe not as good as they are, right? And so, I mean, I think it's the definition of founder's cap. You must create a team to get organizations beyond the capacity of a single entity, right? So, I have gone into organizations where the owner is disappointed in the employees, right? The owner says, you know, I've got good folks, they do what they're told to do and they do it the way they're told to do it. But I don't see a lot of potential in these folks, right? They don't show a lot of initiative. There's not a lot happening there. They're just doing what they're told. And frequently, and probably the majority of the time when investigated, it's because they're told what to do from step A all the way through Z with no ability to think on their own. They'll start to walk forward and the owner will go, whoa, whoa, whoa. Why did you step forward with your right foot? We step forward with our left foot first. And you're like, okay, if it's that much control, that much micromanaging, of course those employees aren't showing any initiative. Of course they're waiting for you to solve the problems. They know if they try, it's going to be wrong or you're going to jump in and do it anyway, right? So I think recognizing that if we set points that we're trying to get to and we say, okay, everybody, we're going there and your responsibility is in this area, that yours is this area, that yours is this area, and so on, and we're all going there, then you look up and you say, have we gotten there? Yes. Okay, great. If we haven't, why haven't we gotten there? Not, whoa, whoa, whoa. Well, we're going there. I see that you're kind of heading that way, but you're driving in a yellow car and we drive in red cars. Whoa, whoa, whoa. What are you doing over here? You can't do that. You've got to allow the whole thing to move forward, because if everybody's pulling together, then it's going to get there.
Yes, good point. And one thing I'd like to say before we get off the podcast is, how do I know what my workplace culture is? If you're a business and you're out there and you're not sure what culture you have, ask your employees. They will tell you, whether you do a quick survey monkey with a couple questions on it. And if the answers that you hear back are not the answers you want to hear, I think it's a really good time to sit down with this approach that we've outlined here today and figure out where you want to go and get yourself there.
And let me say this, that needs to be anonymous. I know a lot of owners who turn around and do immediately ask, and the employee tells them what they were supposed to say. They tell them what they're supposed to hear, because they know what that is. So if you really, really want to know, you can do the secret shopper method and you can, find out what's going on, or you can ask your employees, but do it in a way that they can actually tell you what they actually think.
Good point. Good point. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today for another edition of Reigniting Small Business, and we will see you next time.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.